CWPA Remote.
Hi, I'm Ed Hawes, Director of Communications for the Collegiate Water Polo Association, and joining me today on CWPA Remote is Matt Anderson, Connecticut College men's and women's water polo coach. Thanks for joining us today, Coach.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to speak with you, Ed Haas.
Well, we'll see how that goes. Why don't you give us a little bit of your background, how you got into water polo, where you're originally from, kind of the 30,000-foot view of Matt Anderson's collegiate and post or pre-collegiate water polo experience.
I'll give you a real short one because, it goes so far back, probably even before you were born. But, at the end of the day, from San Diego, and we had at Mission Bay High School in Pacific Beach, we had to bike our way up to Claremont for not only swimming, but also for club water polo at that time, which was, now has become San Diego Shores. Dick Drag back in the day, which if you're under the age of 50, you don't know who that is. Went off to San Jose State, we're fortunate there. Mike Monsees, was, the coach up there, and then Von Kadelchek, who actually was the lady who replaced Sandy Nita when Sandy stepped down from the national team after X amount of years. She was the swim coach there, and also worked with water polo team. And one day my senior year, she said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I came to San Jose State probably to be a teacher." She goes, "No, you need to be a coach." And I'm like, "Really?" She's like, "Yeah." So I'm like, "Okay." So got out of college, did substitute teaching, and got a high school job, started up in Northern California, Santa Clara High School, where Chuck Hines, which back in the day, that was the Speedo of the day, and where Mark Spitz went to school as well, Santa Clara High School, then moved down to Newbury Park for a couple years. And my college roommate at the time at San Jose State, he's now the Cal Lutheran coach, Craig Ron, but he got me the Newbury Park job. And back in the day, 90, 91, it was co-ed. Men and women played together. And then I did water polo and swimming, and we started South Coast Water Polo. And then went back up north, and I worked with disadvantaged youth initially I worked at Apple for a few months. Then, in hindsight, what was I thinking? But I took a job with City of Sunnyvale, worked with disadvantaged youth, teen parents, and high school dropouts. And then I also was the men's coach, and then I started the women's program as well at Los Gatos High School. So did that for years. And then one day Lou Tolley picked up the phone and said, "You need to be a college coach." And I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, come join me at San Jose State. You went here, you'd be perfect here." So I gave up my career, which I'd be retiring next year if I'd kept it. And I took out what 401k I had then, and took a job at San Jose State as a football game management person to offset my salary. Women's water polo assistant, and then 2 years later ended up at Indiana with Barry King, was there for 10 months, and then became the head coach at Michigan for 12 years, and we were successful. And after my second child, I realized I had to make a decision between, the eat, sleep, water polo world of Division I that makes you lose your hair, makes your gut expand, all that stuff, or dummy down, stay involved in the sport, and be better with my family. And so I moved to D3. I should say during that time, I spent 10 years on the national youth team as assistant coach, also was an assistant with the junior team, ended up 6 different Olympic coaches on the men and women's side. I worked under my last 2 years involved. I was a head coach of the women's senior national B team and took the B team, outside of California players as well, a mixture of the B team to Shenzhen, China, 2000 World 11 Championships for World University Games, and I was a head coach, and we basically won the gold medal but took the silver because we played the Chinese Olympic team in the final. And if you're playing China in the middle of China, it doesn't matter who you have. You could have 7 Tony Azevedos, you're not going to beat them. And then after that trip is when I stepped down from my 12 years involved in the national team between men and women, and now I'm at Connecticut College teaching and coaching men and women's water polo. So in a synopsis, that's my background. And this background is Connecticut College, which we truly are on the water. Right there's athletic facility. We're not these schools that say we're on the water. We are, like UC Santa Barbara, on the water.
You're one of the few schools that has another school literally right next to your campus. I mean, from the pool, it's a stone's throw to the U.S. Coast Guard Academy as well, which people don't understand. New London, Connecticut, there's actually 2 colleges side by side. Connecticut and the Coast Guard Academy are literally side by side with one another.
And people get confused because we basically, the block in between the 2 schools is student housing, but it also has like the career center and things like that. So people get confused that whole row is one college in particular, but it really is awesome to be next to one of the military academies, and our campus itself is one of the most beautiful ones in the nation.
You mentioned came from California, ended up at Indiana as an assistant coach with Barry King, who's now the head coach at George Washington, and then Michigan, and then Connecticut College. So you had a culture shock going from sunshine in Southern California to winter in the Midwest, then winter in Michigan, and then winter in New England. So you've seen, the only place you haven't seen a bad winter yet is getting up into like the Arctic. You've seen pretty much the worst of the worst for winter. If you're recruiting a kid from Southern California, how do you sell someone to come to Connecticut College? And then how do you sell someone, especially coming from an environment that's sunshine and 80 degrees to where it's, 30 degrees, 20 degrees and snow, and, how do you recruit someone to come to Connecticut College?
Well, and that's kind of the path that I decided to take as a coach. I'm pretty sure I would have ended up at a very good California school had I stayed at San Jose State. And I would have stayed at San Jose State with Lou Tolley, who was an incredible man for years. But when they're paying you $8,000 a year, I had to think of it. And I remember when I told Barry, I am interested in your position, he's like, why would you do that? You guys are 5th in the nation. You're in California, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, if I truly love being a coach, I want to coach water polo, and that's ultimately, I have higher aspirations, and leaving California allows me to learn about the rest of the country, allows me to make more connections across the country. And ultimately, my grandparents were from Elkhart, Indiana, and my mother and sister actually are both Michigan State alumni. So I had ties to the Big Ten in the Midwest, and I still have aunts and uncles back there in the Michigan, Illinois area. And it's the same thing I tell recruits. You can always go home again, but if you get an opportunity to come to a school like Connecticut College, you're 90 miles from Boston, 98 miles from New York City. You get an idea to see how the East Coast operates. You could do internships in those cities. You can always go home again to California. Then you have a better understanding of how to deal with people from around the nation. You have a better understanding of what you may want rather than just only living in the same 20-mile radius your whole career life, and then you realize, oh, I guess I better get a job here because I don't know if I want to move to, Texas, to Minnesota, to Michigan, to Florida, to Alabama, to Connecticut. It's just a matter of growing, and that's what a school like Connecticut College can offer you, both academically and also aesthetically, from being on the Thames River right at the Long Island Sound, being next to Coast Guard Academy, just the opportunities that you can do knowing you can go home again.
Okay, obviously you coached in Michigan, you coach at Connecticut College. In terms of number of championships, you have the most conference championships since the start of NCAA women's play in the D1 ranks of the CWPA when you were at Michigan. Now, when you moved over to Connecticut, you have the most D3 championships of any coach since the CWPA formed the D3 championship. What was the transition from Michigan, where you had players like Julie Hearn, Shayna Welch, and former U.S. national team goalie and Olympic goalie Betsy Armstrong, to Connecticut College? That transition from Michigan to Connecticut College, have you kept the level of success that you had at Michigan at Connecticut College?
Well, I had to reinvent myself as a coach. And this is the difference. At Michigan, I had 132 practices a year. I could go 4 hours a day, September 2nd, even though we didn't play until January 10th. I could just grind. D3, because we're in the NESCAC, so we're, the small Ivies, outside the Ivies, we are the best academic conference in the nation, regardless of D1, D2, D3. And they only allow us to only work during the season. So I cannot start practice until February 15th for the women, and the season's over April 15th. I'm not allowed to do anything in the off season. And same with the men. I can start the last week of August, November 7th, the season's over. So I roughly have 35 practices to teach them everything I need to teach them to make them fundamentally sound to hopefully win games. And so at that point, just think about it. I have 2 hours a day in the water. So you're looking at, I have 75 hours where in a matter of 3 weeks, I'd cover 75 hours at Michigan, and I'd still have 25 weeks to go. So that means physically, you have to hope that they will come in decent enough shape, but you also have to tailor your coaching to what each individual kid can do to make themselves feel as good as they can feel. And by that, they're there for school 100%. Water polo is something they do because they love it. So you have to allow them to love it, and you have to take them for who they are. I've had some outstanding players, like with Stefania Lopez right now, Nemo as we call her, Nikki Jobson, Kelsey Millwood, Arturo Freitas, Dylan Pinkert, it's Carlos Harros. It's amazing. The kids I had that could have played D1, but they wanted to put academics first. Mm-hmm. So you just find someone that doesn't mind playing with different levels of players and understands when the game's over, we go do what we do, and we come back the next day, and it's a whole new day. It's not like D1 that a loss can stay with you or can ratchet different things up. It is a pressure-free environment, and I honestly think that's why we've been so successful. And the men have had the most success they've ever had because it's pressure-free. Just play the game. I'll figure out how to put you in a situation to do well, and if you don't, you'll still get an opportunity to do well the next day. It's not a big deal.
At Division III, you have athletes that can both swim and play water polo. In Michigan, at least from what I remember, there weren't many women's athletes that were swimming and then going right into water polo season. But, you've had that experience at Connecticut College where you've had athletes that have gone to NCAAs and done very well at NCAAs, the NCAA swimming championship for the women, and then transition straight from swim season with maybe a little break right into water polo season. How do you deal with that, having an athlete that you don't have a contact with for a portion of your season because the NCAA swimming season runs into water polo season, especially with the championships? How do you compensate for those situations where you have an athlete that's, at the Division III national championship level for swimming and then transitioning right into water polo?
And I guess part of it is, it's different when you're at a Division I. You believe every game matters, the win or the loss. At the end of the day, at Division III, you can't have that attitude. So I let the teams know, hey, these are the only 3 games we need to show up for. The other games, I don't care. We can lose every game. Doesn't matter. We will show up and we will compete extremely well that final weekend. So we will build up because we don't have the off season to work with things. And we also know we're going to get an influx of 1 or 2 players that are going to join us for the final 2 weeks of the season. So at that point, it actually makes everybody else better because, we have, Brooklyn Hayes right now, the outstanding 2-meter set for us, but we don't get her till the final 2 weeks. So my quote backup 2-meter set for the first 6 weeks is our main 2-meter set. So they get a lot more opportunities. So they're better than they ever would be had they just only got 4 to 5 minutes a game versus getting 23, 24 minutes a game, knowing that now we can move people around when Brooklyn comes back because we have someone capable because they've been given the experience to get better. And that's what D3 is about, is getting people involved, allowing them to grow and everything. I mean, I have had boys and girls that sat on the bench in high school that become All-Americans at the college level. That doesn't happen at D1. You come in with a pedigree, and it's very hard to lose that pedigree because coaches are hoping that you're going to continue to carry on the pedigree you came in with. So to break through on the D1 side is a lot harder. D3 side, especially at Connecticut College, I don't even care if I see you play. You have to be appropriate for the school. You have to understand the academics are 100% while you're here, why you are here. And then I'm pretty confident in my ability, so I will make you a better water polo player. If you love the game, you will get better. Just love the school, and you're going to be on the team regardless. And it's just happened to work out so far.
Outside of your coaching experiences, you've also been served multiple times on the NCAA Rules Committee and NCAA Water Polo Committees. How's that? Where do you see the game going, and what's that service been like for the NCAA committees?
Well, it's been tremendous for me, and I guess I've always been elected to various positions by other coaches because at the end of the day, I want to do what's best for water polo, and we are going to make decisions not based on emotion. And you know what? If a quote friend is mad at a decision we made, so be it. It's a professional decision based on water polo. And there are a lot of coaches out there, a lot of powerful coaches that could not be in this position because they only go off of emotion. They don't look at it completely. So one thing, I've been fortunate for my 10 years being the only person to be chair of the women's NCAA committee, the men's NCAA committee, and the rules committee twice, is even when I was a D1 coach, I wanted rules that were good for D3, D2, and D1. All deep, shallow deep, because at the end of the day, D3 is what keeps water polo alive. When you have almost half the schools that play are D1 or D2 and D3, that's the reason why we have a collegiate championship. So we cannot put in a rule that penalizes the D3 teams. Some coaches don't understand that. But at the end of the day, the championships are played on level ground, but there are going to be different things that benefit both Division One, Division Two, and Division Three in terms of how we do things. I've made it clear, and I have a ton of experience, more than most, that the FINA game's not really been a good game. It's been let's just beat each other up and hope the ref is being honest and makes calls when they want to make calls. And every 2 years, we're doing a new game. College game has taken the view, we're going to be the same game, and we're going to slowly make changes. I remember it may have been 4 years ago, I was yelled at by a couple D1s for us not passing the 5-on-5 rule. And I said, that's the stupidest rule ever. 5-on-5. College athletics is about participation. It's not about only even when I was at Michigan, I had a roster limit I had to have. And you look at MPSF schools that have 35, 40 people. 5-on-5 would kill our sport. Then as soon as people saw it, everybody's like, oh, that's a horrible idea. FINA after 1 year is like, worst idea ever. Let's get rid of it. So we just don't jump on the bandwagon. What we did do this year, Ed, though, is we added in some of the rules that FINA put in, from the 6-meter live coming in from 2 meters, things like that, to try and change a little, but also understanding that we could walk it back if we want, or even if FINA goes in another direction, which ultimately they will. They've proven that over the last 20 years. We still may end up keeping it. Whatever is best for us is what we do. And, I love watching the Olympics, FINA games, everything like that, but I truly believe college water polo is the best played in terms of understanding and playing the game, and not just being physically the strongest person out there. And so it's been great for me, great for administrative skills. I have made a lot of enemies, made new friends, but I will also tell you, there are a lot of people, it doesn't matter. If you're the chair of the rules committee, like I told Ted Minnis, who's taking over for me, it isn't going to help you get one single call. If anything, they're going to be mad because you didn't adapt the call that they wanted you to adapt. So just deal with it.
All right. Coach Anderson, I think I'll end it there. Thanks for doing this for us, and good luck with the men's season and women's season this upcoming year. If everything works out with COVID, we can get around to it.